Pleasure to be here, Monkar, and the whole Toronto data professional community. Thank you for joining this session. I hope you will find it interesting. So this session is about OneLake, one of the key foundations of Microsoft Fabric. And the purpose of the session is to give you an overview of what OneLake is and how organizations and you can benefit from using OneLake as a part of Fabric. My name is Pawel Potasinski. I work at Microsoft as a senior program manager on the Fabric community team. I work mostly with user groups, MVPs, community. You can call me kind of evangelist, but in reality, I have lots of different activities as my full-time job. In the past, I was a community leader in Poland, where I'm located, and I was also Microsoft MVP on SQL Server and Data Platform, but that was a long time ago. If you want to connect with me, feel free to jump in and send me a message on LinkedIn, on Twitter, so we can join each other's network. So now, before we go into details on OneLake, let me briefly remind you what Microsoft Fabric is and why you should care. So Fabric is a unified platform that provides everything an organization needs for data analytics, from data integration and data lake to the business user working with Office. It includes data integration, data engineering, data warehousing, data science, real-time analytics, business intelligence, and more, because if you look at the workloads or experiences, there is the new workload called Data Activator, which is not the topic of this session, but I find it really exciting because it goes from insights to action. Now, Fabric is delivered as a single software as a service product that provides automatic integration and optimization, common architecture, central management, and the same user interface for all roles and workloads in the analytical project. So you can actually compare it to Microsoft Office, where, for example, Excel and PowerPoint serve for something else, but many activities in both of these programs are performed by the user in the same way. For example, spell checking, copying and pasting, text formatting, and more. So we want to achieve the same with Fabric. So we want to have easy to use user interface, which is shared by all the experiences, and we want to simplify things for people working with analytics. And what is an important message here on this slide is that every analytics workload in Fabric works seamlessly with OneLake to minimize data management time and effort by eliminating data duplication. Now, that's number one important topic here. So to talk about OneLake, let's start with why. Why did we implement OneLake in Fabric? First, many of our customers invested in data lakes. They use data lakes to land all data and break down silos by having one central place to store data with simplified management, governance, and data discovery. Or they can treat data lake just as a landing zone for data warehousing solutions. But anyway, if you land in the clouds, especially, data lake is a commodity, right? Okay. If there are any questions, my suggestion is to go with raising your hand and or eventually drop the question in the chat window. I will take some questions after the presentation. I try to make some time for us. And I'm not limited to 1 hour, so I will not run out right after this session. Okay, so the reality is different than expectation, right? Because to go to the desired state is quite difficult. Analytics with data lakes is a lot like file sharing before we got OneDrive. So you have to build a file sharing solution once you create all those storages and folder structures for your lake. And services like OneDrive are changing the game by providing a software as a service solution for file sharing. So we wanted OneLake to be such a game changer for analytics. Now, the reality is quite difficult because even though in the cloud, you don't have to buy servers, but rather storage accounts, it's still complicated to coordinate how different teams work with data in the lake. And when the data mesh operational model comes into the game, you typically end with a bunch of data lakes owned and managed by different teams, making data reuse and exchange in the organization a complex task, or even sometimes impossible task, to be honest. So you end up with data silos. Each team or department has their own data lake with common data being copied among different parts of organization. Most users and applications are not able to access the data in the data lakes directly. They go through layers built on top of data lakes, like data marts, cubes, Power BI datasets, you name it. Building those layers involves data movement and duplication as well. And you create copies of the data, sometimes even copies of the copies. Plus, you have to build solutions to keep the data updated. This is why we introduced OneLake in Microsoft Fabric. OneLake aims to provide you a data lake as a service without you needing to build it yourself. So you don't provision any storage accounts. We basically do it for you. And just like you have OneDrive for all your documents, now you have OneLake for all your data. That's how we want you to perceive OneLake. Let's dive into more details on how OneLake becomes OneDrive for your data by going through its key concepts. So there are 4 key concepts right now of OneLake. This may evolve. We are still in public preview of Microsoft Fabric, so expect some things to change, but I think the core concepts remain the same. So first, OneLake provides you with a single data lake for the entire organization. And what does it mean? For every Fabric tenant, you will always have exactly one OneLake. No 2 OneLakes, no 0 OneLakes, just one OneLake. And there is nothing to provision, no infrastructure to set up or manage. The concept of a tenant is not new, but it's quite unique benefit of software as a service like Power BI. So you may be familiar with tenant concept from Power BI. Tenant allows us to automatically provide a single management and governance boundary for an entire organization, which is ultimately under the control of tenant admin. The admin sets its initial boundary, and any data which lands in OneLake will automatically take part in out-of-the-box data governance, such as lineage, data protection, certification, catalog integration, etc. And all the data is under the control of a tenant admin. However, different business groups can work independently without going through a central gatekeeper, which is tenant admin in this case. Now, OneLake enables distributed ownership through workspaces. Again, this is not a new concept. You know it from Power BI. Different workspaces allow different parts of the organization to work independently while still contributing to the same data lake. Again, the concept of OneLake is under the hood. It's the foundation of all the workspaces. Each workspace can have its own administrator, access control, region, and capacity for billing. And of course, creating a workspace is a very lightweight. It actually inherits the rules set by tenant admins, so there is no need to re-implement the same governance or spend time trying to get different resources to talk to each other. Now, workspace admins can further control access to the data within their workspace as needed. So again, this is quite as much as in Power BI. You might be thinking that your organization can't have just one lake because you're in multiple countries and you have requirements that data must reside in those countries. In Poland, for example, you have lots of public entities who needs to store data, who must store data in Poland, not in some other countries. So OneLake covers this requirement by spanning the globe as well. So different workspaces can reside in different regions. This means that any data in those workspaces will also reside in those countries. Well, OneLake is built on top of Azure Data Lake Store Generation 2. Under the covers, it may use multiple storage accounts in different regions. However, OneLake will virtualize them into one logical lake. So you will see just one big data lake, but it may be dispersed across the globe. In OneLake, all data comes as a part of Fabric data items, and many Fabric data items are pre-wired to store data in OneLake using open file formats. What is a Fabric data item? If you use Power BI, you already are familiar with one of them. its Power BI dataset. So Fabric brings several new data items, with tailored experiences for different personas. For example, a fully transactional data warehouse for T-SQL developers and a lakehouse for data engineers working with Spark. The lakehouse provides the most lake-like experience for anyone used to working with storage today, but it also provides so much more. No matter which item you start with, they will all store their data in OneLake, similar to how Word, Excel, and PowerPoint save documents in OneDrive. If we look at how data is stored in OneLake, you are not going to see data items and workspaces. You will see files and folders, just like you would in a data lake today. All workspaces are going to be folders. Each data item will be a folder as well. We picked Delta as the format for tabular data in Fabric. We are not creating any new proprietary file formats for Fabric because proprietary formats create data silos. Even our data warehouse will natively store its data in Delta format. While Fabric data items will standardize on Delta for tabular data, OneLake is still a data lake built on top of ADLS Gen 2, so it supports any file type, structured or unstructured. How the data is stored is important because OneLake is not just a Fabric data lake or Microsoft data lake. We want it to be open for integration with other platforms. And that's why OneLake supports the same ADLS Gen 2 APIs and SDKs, which means that you can easily integrate OneLake with existing ADLS applications like Azure Databricks. For these applications, Fabric tenants will appear as one big storage account with different workspaces appearing as different containers with their data organized into folders. The underlying physical storage is virtualized. OneLake ensures proper scale and performance, so you don't have to take care about how many storage accounts you spin up under the hood. Now, in Fabric, different groups can work independently with the same data lake without the overhead of managing different storage resources. If needed, they implement the popular data mesh pattern more efficiently than they could before. OneLake takes this even further with the introduction of domains. Actually, domains show up in Power BI as well, and it's a first-class concept. So business domain single business domain may have multiple workspaces, as workspaces tend to align with specific projects or teams or maybe business areas. A domain is a way of logically grouping together all the data in an organization, and it's relevant to an area or field. So, for example, in this case, we have sales, marketing, and finance domains. Domains are defined with domain admins and contributors who can logically group together workspaces under those domains. Domains provide a management boundary between tenant and workspace, enabling admins to have more granular control over multiple workspaces. But domains also simplify data discovery and consumption across the entire organization, and I will show you that later in this session. So I think it's time for our first demo. I'll be doing demo live, so hopefully demo gods are with me. Let's see how it goes. So this is my private, not Microsoft Fabric tenant. This is used by myself to learn, to play. I would say that's a great idea for you as well to create a separate tenant to play with Fabric, just in case to not mess up with your organizational ones, and then you give it a try. So what is important for me here, first of all, let me go to some settings that may be important for you. I'm pretty sure you have already seen how to start with Fabric. So just to remind, there is an option to enable Microsoft Fabric Preview. If you go to admin portal in your Power BI portal, then Microsoft Fabric is here. Also, you can decide which users can start 60-day trial of Fabric trial capacity. So that's it. But from OneLake perspective, there are other options available in the admin portal as well. So first of all, tenant settings. This is everything that sets up your tenant, the organization. But under the tenant, you have different elements of the hierarchy. So first of all, you have domains. So you have this new part of admin portal called domains. And notice that I have already created two domains. One is called finance, the other one is called transport. How those domains can be used, I will show you in later on. But an important part is that tenant is the first level in the hierarchy. Then the second one is domain, right? And I can create a new domain by providing its name, its description, and even by customizing it to decide some domain image that will show up whenever domain will be displayed anywhere in the options. And I can also decide who will be administrating the domain, plus who will be able to contribute to domain, so create workspaces, etc., etc. I will not create a new domain here. And the third part of hierarchy here is capacity. Capacity is the compute power that sits behind workspaces you will create in your Fabric tenant. So here I have two capacities created in Azure. And also I have my trial capacity, which I will not show you at this time. Notice that those two capacities have different regions. So I created two capacities in two different US regions, North Central US and West US too. That's an important aspect because that's how I'm going to show you how OneLake can be geographically distributed. Okay, so the first exercise, let's create a new workspace because, hey, I've just heard that workspace is the organizational box for everything I create and everything that stores data in Fabric. So let's create a new workspace. I will call it demo. As simple as that. And I will not assign it to a domain, but the most important part comes here. This is gonna be Fabric workspace, not Power BI based on Pro or Premium per user, but Fabric based on trial. You could also go with backing up this workspace with Fabric capacity. I will pick trial. So apply. Okay, nothing interesting here because I don't have any data items. But let's create something in this workspace. So first of all, if you want to detect if you enabled Fabric in your organization and if Fabric is available in the organization, this little icon in the left bottom corner shows you that yes, you really enabled Fabric for your organization. So you can switch experiences or personas here by just clicking on this Power BI button. And I can switch, for example, to data engineering, but because I'm going to create a lakehouse in my demo workspace. So let's create a lakehouse. Now, if that would be the first, if it was the first lakehouse in my tenant, that would be the moment when OneLake is provisioned and created for my tenant. However, that's not the case because I have existing workspaces with existing data items. But I will anyway create a lakehouse, not just lakehouse. So I create a data item that stores data in OneLake. Lakehouse, warehouse, KQL databases, all those items that store data, they keep this data in OneLake. So Lakehouse is a, I would say, very it has very typical structure. So you have files section, which is for storing unmanaged part of the lakehouse, and you have tables section, which stores tabular version of your data, so tables really. So let me do one thing. I will just create a new subfolder in files section. I will call it payment. And then I will just upload some single file to this. I will upload a single file to this section. And after the data lands in the lakehouse, you can actually go and analyze this data. For example, you could create a new notebook. And simply navigate through the lakehouse structure of files. For example, go to my newly created payment folder, drag and drop payment CSV file, run this section, which will read the CSV file into a data frame object, typical for Spark, and then it will display some sampler rows from this data frame. So I can analyze the data right away. But this session is not about analyzing data. It's about OneLake as a foundation for storing data. So as you can see, playing with data is quite immediate, right? Now, let's move out from the notebook and switch back to the lakehouse. Okay, so I created a workspace. I created a lakehouse in this workspace, and I uploaded some file to the files section. Now let's create a table out of this CSV file. You notice it's a simple file with 2 columns. So I'm right-clicking on this file, load it to tables, give this table the name payment type. And what happens right now under the scenes, Fabric is doing things for that goes like this. It takes the CSV file, the data from this file, and it creates a delta format table in this lakehouse. So after a short time, I should see a table showing up here. So I have my payment type table. Okay, now this table can be queried using SQL. This table can be analyzed using Python. I can do pretty much everything. But what I wanted to show you is how this data is visible in different applications that work with data lake store generation tool or applications that are dedicated to OneLake. So first of all, we call OneLake OneDrive for data. So when I think OneDrive, I immediately think about applications like this. So this is actually a classical Windows Explorer, but with additional application installed in my system. This application is called OneLake File Explorer. You can download it and play with it on your own. What it does is actually it adds OneLake section that allow you to access OneLake with within your preferred tenant. For example, here I'm logged into my sample organization tenant, and I can easily navigate through the file and folder structure of my OneLake. So, for example, if I sync this view, I should see my demo workspace listed as a folder. And if I go into this, I see my lakehouse object. The first lakehouse is the object name. The other lakehouse is the name of the data item. Actually, is the data item type, right? So this is lakehouse called the lakehouse. Not a very fortunate name for a lakehouse, I would say. But when I go deeper, I see files, tables, and some mysterious warehouse system, which I will not go into. But those files and tables are very much like what I have seen just a second ago in the portal. So, for example, I have my file here. I can even download this file or upload additional files, just like I would normally do with File Explorer. So let me maybe upload some picture to this folder. My anniversary picture would go there. Let's go. Nothing goes in private. Boom. So I have my PNG file uploaded to OneLake. If I go to the table structure, you can actually verify that the payment type table is being stored as a delta format. So there's delta log and Parquet file that stores the data. So when I get back to my portal, let me just go back to the portal and I refresh it, refresh the lakehouse view. Well, there's me and my beautiful wife 20 years ago, actually 21. So that's how you work with OneLake. It's just like OneDrive, very much. Now I mentioned that it's based on ADLS Gen 2, so it uses the same APIs and SDKs. So why not use the tools that you might be familiar with when working with Azure? So this is nothing new. Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. I'm connected here to my OneLake to specific workspace. Now, let me show you this workspace in the portal. Maybe that will show you the concept. So I have my sample data warehouse workspace. Now, key elements here are two objects. One is the lakehouse. The other one is the data warehouse. So those two actually store most of my data. In public preview, you might notice that there are some additional items, additional objects created when you create data flows and lake houses. I think those items will disappear in time because we will hide everything that is just an additional level of abstraction. We shouldn't show it to you, but in public preview those things are visible. But those are two objects that store real data for me. So let me switch back to this data storage explorer. So as you can see, I have my warehouse, and I can navigate to the tables. Well, actually, warehouse should store tables. Notice there is a DBO folder, which means here is everything that sits in the DBO schema. And guess what? All 4 tables that exist in this warehouse are stored here. And no surprise, every single table is being kept as a Delta format. So as easy as that. Now, notice one thing. Here, I am connected to the endpoint that is very specific because it says OneLake Blob Fabric Microsoft.com, and then it says this is the name of my workspace. That may not be the case every single time. At some point, you will be able to use names. In other cases, you will be forced to use GUIDs. So every tenant, every workspace is identified by GUID as well. And I would say this: if you keep the naming convention for your workspaces and for your data items without spaces and special characters, you should be good to go with names. Other than that, Storage Explorer will probably allow you to connect using names, but in other applications, like for example, Databricks, you will be forced to use GUIDs. So speaking about Databricks, how about using Databricks? So what I have here is another workspace, Direct Lake. That's a demo for showing Direct Lake. I have a lakehouse here with some tables created, but also with some files, actually one file, products CSV existing. So let me do one thing. I will connect to this specific lakehouse using Databricks, and I will try to at least consume the data from this list, from this lakehouse. Again, using OneLake capabilities of connecting using ADLS APIs. So whenever you access lakehouse files, tables, or whatever, it's good to reach out to properties of your folders and copy one of the paths, either URL or ABFS path. For Databricks, I will use ABFS, so I could copy that. And now let's move to Databricks. So here's a very simple notebook based on run with personal cluster in Databricks. And let's find out if that works for me. So this is the same ABFS path leading to files. And then I will add to this specific subpath leading to products CSV file. Let's run it. And then let's read this file, product CSV, into a new data frame in Databricks. And let's display the data that sit in this file. It should take just a few seconds because it's just another ADLS from Databricks perspective. So in a few seconds, I see my CSV files. The same about writing. Notice that this cluster, this Databricks cluster, is accessing OneLake and its structures using my Azure Active Directory identity. So I'm logged in as the same account I've been playing with Fabric in the Fabric portal, and that's why I can read, write, and configure things. So here is an example of how you can write. Nothing very special. I'm reading one of the CSV files into a data frame, and then I write it down. Then I write it down here. Write it down to a new folder called trips. I will not run it because that would run for 2 or 3 minutes. Let's not spend that much time. So again, great way to work with Databricks and OneLake as well. Now, let me show you also the Fabric capacity is the same as Power BI capacity. Well, yes and no. If you bought PBI premium capacity, then you have PBI premium, which can, of course, host all the workloads of Fabric. But Fabric has its own capacities, which you can check out in Azure. So in Azure, when you go to your resource group for creating resources, you are able to create Fabric capacities. They are very much like Power BI premium capacities, but they start with lower thresholds. So if you go to stormy weather. You probably hear that or not. So here you can see the size starts at 2 capacity units, and it's much cheaper than Power BI Premium P1 capacity. P1 is actually F64 if you ask me, right? So it's not that much different than Fabric. I mean, there's not much difference between Power BI and Fabric, right? Now, what I wanted to show you as well is that I can create a geographically distributed OneLake, which I already did actually. So notice here, I have 2 Fabric capacities already created. Now the difference is that one sits in North Central US, the other one is West US 2. And guess what? In Fabric, I have 2 workspaces. One is called North Central US, or OneLake GeoDemo North Central US, and it sits and it's backed by I should show you this here in admin portal. Capacity settings. It's not the UI of the capacities is still not perfect, but here you can check which workspaces are based on which capacities. So North Central US. Here's my workspace, OneLake GeoDemo North Central US. If I go back to West US 2, it has also one workspace assigned. It's called OneLake GeoDemo West US 2. So I have two different workspaces based on 2 different capacities located in different Azure regions, which means that the files that are stored there are stored in different locations. Now, how to prove this actually that the lake houses created within those workspaces are sitting in different lake regions? Now, that's a bit tricky. You have to go to one of those workspaces, for example, to the lakehouse specifically. And when you try to create a new shortcut, I will discuss shortcuts in a second, but if you go to the shortcuts, then you can see which data items are sitting in which regions. For example, I see that this lakehouse WUS2 is sitting in West US2. So unfortunately, this is not visible in any other part of the UI right now, but when you create a shortcut, you are able to check where the data item is actually being stored in OneLake. And that's how you can actually also confirm that your OneLake sits in multiple regions. Okay, enough of the demo. Yeah,
Pawel,
there's questions.
sorry to interrupt. Is it okay to take a question? I think it's a
Sure.
Yeah.
Go on.
You know, Tang Amy, they asked about you know, Power BI capacity and Fabric capacity are the same. I think you already answered. But then the next one is like, can you get rid of Power BI capacity, or we need both working together when the Fabric is available?
You can have only one, and you're good to go. Any one of those Fabric or Power BI capacity will work with all workloads of Fabric. So no need to decide. If you already have Power BI Premium, go and check if this capacity can handle. That's an important question. If this capacity can handle all the workloads you want to spin up in Fabric. That's the main question. How you will be managing the workloads, because Power BI is one workload, but you will be probably willing to add Lakehouse, data engineering, and I'm not sure, data warehousing, for sure, data integration. So the good question is how this will impact your capacity. Maybe there will be a requirement to purchase another one to spread different workloads among different capacities. But that's the only answer to that. That's the only question to answer.
Okay. There is one more. Pawel, I don't know, you want to take now or at the end of the session?
Let's maybe move those questions to the Q&A. Okay.
Oh, sure.
I still have at least one demo to show.
Sure, go ahead.
So now let's move to the concept of one copy, because that's an important one. I consumed too much time on the first one, but let's go into one copy. So today you are forced to copy data across lakes and clouds to break down data silos. You are forced to copy the data out of the lake itself into different data engines to serve the data to users and applications, right? To cubes, Power BI datasets. Well, now one copy aims to get the most value possible out of a single copy of data without movement or duplication. So we want just a single copy of data in OneLake. Now, let's go back and look at different domains of our organization in OneLake. Large organizations will typically have lots of data domains with different data owners. If we zoom out, we can see all these domains in OneLake with lots of dependencies. This is because a single data item needs to span across multiple domains. For example, you may want to have one definition of your customer. Shortcuts provide the connections between domains so that data can be virtualized into a single data product without data movement, data duplication, or changing the ownership of the data. So let's zoom back and look at how it's done. A shortcut is a symbolic link, very much like what you create within operating systems. So the data will appear in the shortcut location as if it were physically there. Now, today, if you have tables in a data warehouse which you want to make available alongside other tables or files in a lakehouse, you will need to copy the data out of the warehouse. With OneLake, you simply create a shortcut in the lakehouse pointing to the warehouse. The data will appear in your lakehouse as if you had physically copied it. Since you didn't copy it, when the data is updated in the warehouse, changes are reflected in the lakehouse. You can also use shortcuts to consolidate data across workspace and domains without changing the ownership of the data. In this example, workspace B still owns the data while still have ultimate control over who can access and and how it stays up to date. Okay, so again, it's not just about bringing data between different types of data items. It's also about bringing data, connecting the data between different parts of organization. Now, it's not all. You can actually use shortcuts to virtualize your existing ADLS Gen 2 accounts or Amazon S3 buckets into OneLake. So they will appear normally just like you would have them in OneLake, but still the data will sit in different storages. Now keep in mind that for S3 there is read-only access via shortcuts. For ADLS Gen 2 you can both read and write. of course, it's based on Azure AD identity. What's important, all data is mapped to the same unified namespace and can be accessed using the same ADLS Gen 2 APIs, even when it's coming from S3. That's an interesting. Now, here are different examples of shortcuts created in a single lakehouse. So you have shortcut to another lakehouse, warehouse, KQL database, and both storages from different clouds. But also, please note that you can create shortcuts not only in lakehouses, but also in KQL databases. I'm not sure if we will enable options for shortcuts in other data items. So stay tuned. Now, let's see a quick demo on how to play with shortcuts. So I have my demo workspace where I created a lakehouse. And let's say that I don't want to import any more data because I know that somebody else created a table that stores lots of data that I can use for analytics in my case, but it sits in different lakehouse. So what I can do, I can create a shortcut in my lakehouse that will point to another lakehouse sitting in the same OneLake. This is gonna be Direct Lake Demo Lakehouse. And I will just display one table called trip. What is actually being done, a shortcut is being created. So no copy of data. The trip data is still sitting in another lakehouse, in another folder of the same OneLake, but I can access this using this lakehouse. So for example, I could quickly switch to SQL endpoint that serves as an entry point for lakehouse where I can query data using SQL. And I can, for example, write a query. I don't have it ready, but well, let's just query trip. Let's just query trip table. Command select. Just count rows in this table. Boom. Now that will take a few seconds because that's not a small table, but it sits in another lakehouse. And look at this: 1.5 billion rows queried within seconds, and no copy of data. I just reached out to another part of my OneLake. Somebody else did a job for me, imported this data into OneLake, created the structure, and I can join this data with my payment type table. I will not do this, but you can imagine this will simply work. So again, it's a powerful feature, but it's not just about bringing data from my OneLake, but it's also about bringing data from existing storages. So let's move back to my lakehouse. And this time I will create a shortcut in the files section. This shortcut will be pointing to my existing storage account. So here I have storage account. I used to work with this storage account when I was demoing Synapse Analytics for user groups. So hey, nothing is wasted. And I can reach out to the primary endpoint of my data lake storage. This is to be copied here. Go back to my files section of the lakehouse, create a new shortcut. Sorry, not OneLake, previous. This time Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 2. And all you have to do, if you are using the same identity to access ADLS, you don't need any keys, any signatures. You just create a connection directly using URL to the endpoint. And let's use the existing connection. I don't really have to create a new one. And in a second, I should see, well, I have to name it. Let's call it bronze because it's actually bronze layer of my data lake, and it's stored in the bronze folder. Okay. And guess what? I have access to my data that is stored in ADLS Gen 2 in Azure, not in OneLake. And I can play with notebooks, create tables out of this data, whatever I need. So again, great powerful feature to quickly bring the data to Fabric. The last part of my presentation is about roadmap things. So one security, just a brief overview because it's still not there. So one security is actually about providing securing data in a single place in OneLake, and then the security settings will actually will be living downstream in serving on presentation layers. You will be also able to configure more granular security on a data item level. So, for example, RLS you will be setting up in the warehouses rather than in OneLake, but OneLake covers the first set of data access settings that impacts every single persona accessing data. So this will actually impact everyone. People working with T-SQL, people working with Spark, people working with Power BI reports and data sets, even people accessing data sitting in OneLake using different tools and applications like Databricks, for example. Now, stay tuned for more information on One Security. It should show up on Fabric blog or in the roadmap that will come soon. So again, this is not yet developed. Some portions of it landed. I think data warehouse and lakehouse sharing landed last week. So you can play with different permissions on the data item levels, but it's still far from ideal. So I will not go into details of One Security right now. It's more a roadmap thing. Now the last one is Data Hub. It's not complex. So we have one central location in the Fabric UI where users can discover, manage, and reuse data. Users can, for example, browse data by its workspace, access metadata of data items like description, endorsement, or sensitivity label, and can narrow the view of data items to specific domain or filter by item type. Also, you can quickly access lineage view for both downstream and upstream items related to specific item, for example, lakehouse. Now, this will evolve for sure, so you should observe every month, please at least once visit OneLake Data Hub in your tenant because changes are on the way, and also you should be tracking our announcements and the blog. Now, I will just show you very quick demo of this. So you go to the OneLake Data Hub on the left, that's in the navigation, and you can first of all notice that here is the section where you can select the domain. So here I am narrowed to the finance domain. So I see only those items that fall into specific workspaces assigned to the finance domain. That's how you can make data discovery and searching for specific data items easier for the users. Of course, you are still built on Power BI principles, so endorsement is there, so you can, for example, search for endorsed data in my organization. Well, in finance, I don't have any endorsed data set, any endorsed lakehouse or warehouse, so nothing shows up here. But if I select all domains, I think I should have some endorsed assets. Notice also that here you can search, use this search bar for, I don't know, New York City. There we go. There is New York City yellow taxi report. You can also filter by item type. So if you want to select only lake houses, go and select only lake houses. No lake houses endorsed in my organization, but I can see that there are lots of lake houses sitting in my workspaces. So it's right now very simple tool for finding data, for locating different data items. In the future, it's gonna be more complex. Again, do not forget the lineage view. So whenever you want to check which items are related to your lakehouse, it's very simple. Just click on the three dots and select View Lineage option, and that will show you the lineage view of your specific workspace, to be honest, so you can check the lakehouse and the related items quite easily. Now, that's pretty much everything, almost. There's one more thing that I want you to get from this presentation before I end up and have questions. So I want you to do two things. One is learn Fabric. The other one is become become members of its community. Let's start with community. So first, try the product. It's free for 60 days, no credit card, no Azure subscription. You just spin up 60-day trial and you're good to go. Second, join Fabric community, participate in discussions, find user groups that are located nearby, or online user groups like this one. Also, you can access valuable resources on the community site as well. And I can assure you that it's not just about Power BI. It's an evolution of Power BI community, but you have also discussion forums for Synapse, experiences of Fabric, Data Factory experience of Fabric, and Data Activator, newly created, introduced experience of Fabric. Now, share your ideas about the product with the product team. All user perspective matters, so doesn't matter if you're data engineer or Power BI business user, everything matters. Your feedback is really not to overestimate for us. Now, finally, learn the product. I highlighted two options here. Microsoft Learn is an online free course that you can take to get Fabric introduction. And the other one is for end-to-end scenario tutorials that you can use to just walk through specific scenarios like Lakehouse, Warehouse, real-time analytics, and data science. Now, feel free to scan this QR code in the left bottom corner. This leads to my post-build newsletter on LinkedIn. All those links should be available there, so feel free to use those links to access the resources. And that's all from me. Thanks for attending, and I hope you find this session interesting. Now it's time to get more questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pawel. Let's get into one of the questions what Brian Rapp asked. He asked that, is there a way to expand the exciting concept of OneLake to be inclusive of non-data elements, files such as images, videos, etc.? For example, in addition to OneDrive for data, I also have OneDrive for multimedia.
So. Yes. So again, let me go back to the Lakehouse. So what you normally do is this. Your tabular data that should be presented to the business users and served in a tabular format land here in the tables zone. Now, what I didn't mention is Delta is also the best choice because most features in Power BI experience of Fabric works best with Delta. For example, direct lake mode. So whenever possible, use Delta format in tables, but you are not limited to tabular formats or structured and semi-structured formats in the files section. And I actually show you that. I uploaded an image to the files section of one of my lakehouses. I can't remember which one, but then you can easily play with, for example, notebooks and run your data science experiments, create data science models on top of that, or even run some analytics based on images, videos, whatever. What I didn't mention is that in the data science experience of Fabric, you also have all the goodness that come with Synapse analytics. So, for example, Synapse ML libraries, which can allow you to easily integrate with things like OpenAI in Azure, or, for example, cognitive services. So if you think about analyzing images or videos, you can still integrate Fabric with external services, and that's an easy way to go. But still, files is this section of your lakehouse when you can land anything you want, including videos, images, and other binaries.
Yeah, thank you, Pawel. Do you have any of you have more questions? Because I have a question, so
yeah, sure. Like to... shoot me. I'm not the walking encyclopedia of Fabric, but I'm trying. I'm also a user. I'm also a user, right?
Sure. Like, for example, right now, when it's come to giving any access to in a data lake, Azure data lake, is with the storage account level, right? Now we introduce with this Fabric something called domain.
Yes.
What are you thinking about this giving access? Is it coming from that domain level? You're gonna actually have the access control? Is it possible, or what is the concept of having this domain?
So domain is rather a way to rather it's a way to improve the way people discover data, because workspace is just one level of abstraction. You keep all the data items in flat hierarchy of single folders, like workspace A, workspace B. So what domain gives you is another level of abstraction of grouping workspaces to show you that, hey, you have 10 workspaces, but they all fall into specific business area or business or department who is the owner of the data. So notice that on the domain level, you still have administrators and contributors, but it's not about access control. So it's not for access control, okay? At least not now. I'm not sure how domains will evolve over time, but for sure now domains are not about access control. It's more about discovery of data for end users and more about who can contribute to specific domain in terms of attach workspaces to it. Right? Now I see question from Emmy. Workspaces are in different regions. It has to be separate capacity for each region. Yes, because capacity decides where your storage behind the scenes is located. So yes, and keep in mind there are four factors that impact your bill in terms of how you pay for Fabric. Let me just quickly go and list them. So one, capacity, right? You decide to buy F2, F4, F64, blah blah blah. So it's actually compute units or capacity units. Second, you pay for storage. Keep that in mind. We are not providing free storage for you. If you store terabytes, this will cost you more than if you store gigabytes. The cost is not big because it's comparable to what we have with ADLS Gen 2. I can't remember the exact number. There is a blog post on that, a great blog post from Michiel Weigel. I will just paste a link in a second. Now the third part is now you still need Power BI Pro or PPU license if you want to develop Power BI items like datasets, custom datasets and reports. The only exception is when you base your Power BI development on default dataset for Lakehouse, but I don't think it's an often case. And the fourth is egress data transfer. So yes, it means that when you build a solution that is distributed, you may pay some amount of money for the data that you move between different regions in your OneLake, or the data that comes out of OneLake to your, I don't know, PC, for example. So when you download the data from OneLake, yes, you are charged as for egress network transfer in Azure. Now about this blog from me here. Let me just quickly open. So Fabric blog is definitely one of the things to visit.